Welcome to the Carr Brothers with Jeff, Jack, and Jody Carr. They talk about current events, politics, community, and business. Take it away, boys.
Hi there. Welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 167. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers. And boy, do we have someone that everyone in New Brunswick knows.
Yes, yes, we do. Terry Seguin, former broadcaster, journalist for 45 years. Just so great to have you on our show. Most recently, you were on CBC Information Morning in the Fredericton region. So it's been about 4 years since you've retired. Thanks for coming on our show.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking. Sorry, I thought I was going to do a radio interview, so I wore my black T-shirt.
Or your Fonzie shirt.
I wore my Fonzie.
Well, it's great to have you.
Returning guest.
Yeah.
We've had Terry on a little while back.
If people want to search the archives, it's episode 88.
You thought you'd give me another chance.
Way back in May of 2022, yeah.
Yeah, that was probably by Zoom.
Yeah.
That was by Zoom.
Was it? Was that COVID?
Yeah, 2022
end,
too.
Oh, yes, I
Depends on who
remember
you
that.
ask.
Yeah.
Depends
I
on
gave
who
you
you
guys
ask.
a good shot of my nostrils, I think. I had the camera at the wrong angle.
But it's been great to catch up. We were at a charity auction, I guess, last fall downtown at one of the churches and to help raise some money. And we were doing the auctioneering unofficially. And
No money changed hands.
Terry absolutely not. And Terry, you and your family were there. Supporting as well, and we had a little bit of a fun time.
Yeah, we said,
there.
hey,
why don't you come
how
on?
about you come on and talk to us so we can ask you
Follow
how
up. things
things have been. And 4 years have gone by. Do you miss broadcast? Are you happy in retirement?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on now that I would just love to be able to get into a studio
To go back to work.
and ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm enjoying going to bed. I can watch a full playoff hockey game. I don't have to go to bed after the first period. I can sleep in. I mean, my routine is wake up around 8. Willa and I go downstairs, have breakfast. I do the New York Times puzzles, have a couple of cups of coffee, maybe go lift some weights, get on my bike, go for a long bike ride, come home, make dinner, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's really relaxing. And I have come to the conclusion that when you're hosting a morning show or doing any kind of broadcasting, I think it would apply to most kinds of broadcasting, that when you're on, there's a certain amount of stress. You guys must feel it. Like when you start your intro, don't screw this up, get it right. And that stress builds and builds and builds. And I was doing it for a long time, and I was dealing with stress for a loved job. Loved it.
And
Don't get me wrong.
Very good at it.
But there's a side effect that you don't really
Even
acknowledge or doesn't even present itself until you're out of that environment, and then you go, holy crap.
And as you get older, it's harder to recover from
sustain.
that intensity.
What are you suggesting?
I feel. Well, you picked a good time to retire, maybe.
I feel good.
But it is interesting. You don't quite realize until you get out of it, I'm assuming. Like once these last 4 years, then you can reflect and probably not realize how much of the stress was, building up and things, the intensity. And
Well, it was a live show, so there's no retakes.
I also find it ironic, though, that the host was so stressed when we have to remember the politicians that would come on to Terry Seguin's morning show, and it might have created just a little bit of angst for
What
them.
was that like? What was that like coming into a studio to sit down and do an interview with me?
Well, you guys go first because you went first.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I never
I loved it.
had the privilege or the honor to be in cabinet, so I would have been backbench either in government or back, an opposition MLA. So every time I got the call, or if the Premier's office said, "Oh, they asked so and so, they can't be there. Can you fill in as part of the government rep?" Well, that would just get me all excited. That would be excellent. I'm like, good. Let's do this, and just an opportunity to give messaging, but also, I'm not in cabinet, so maybe it's an opportunity for an interview to help out, but also, maybe the powers that be will think I did a good job, and then it just bodes well. But I always got excited for, get the heart pumping.
Yeah, I mostly liked it. probably it would be, if I was minister, it'd be, do I have the accurate information from my department? Am I solid about that? And what other issues are going to be asked? I always felt that the host job, it really was the host's job to ask the questions. It was how I was going to answer them, whether I want to answer them or not. And I was always, with Terry especially, trying to make sure I was as straightforward as possible and not kind of a spin, which it's hard to do when that's how we're brought up in politics, is to spin too. So, but I appreciated how clear you were and really respectful. And so I know not everyone was happy with in the inner circles, but I always said it's your job.
It's an opportunity.
And there's no gotcha. It's your job. I'm the minister. I have to answer questions.
No, I can imagine. They thought I was a real... Is this a family show?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, they thought I was a real pain in the butt, probably, but I guess the important thing for me is, did you think that you were treated fairly?
Yeah, I do. I really do think you treated us fairly.
Did you?
There was no
there was no sneaky.
No, and I always felt as well, like Jody said, you've got to have the next three issues a fair grasp on them, because you could get asked about them. And I also always felt that if I didn't know that information on the next 2, 3, or 4 topics, that it was just as easy to say, listen, this is my latest, but there's probably updates. I didn't have to go down that path too much, but it was easier. But
that's
you were
something
forgiven.
you did. That's something you did.
Yeah.
And
it's
one of the
easier.
few people who would say, I don't know that answer now, but I will get the information and I will get back.
I had great comms directors as well, communications directors that would be listening, and I would tell them, like, I may not have the info, and I may tell the reporter to call you and get it. And they knew that they had it at their right in their machines, right? But I always felt I didn't feel hard done by going. I always felt it was an opportunity, especially if they were files I was working on. I was trying to get them moving, and people needed to hear. It was an opportunity for me to go on the show by myself, have a one-on-one, and you always gave me the time to answer the questions. What I really enjoyed, though, was having another panelist on with me. And that was the fun part.
I think the people enjoyed it too.
Because it's that competitive nature, and you would let us do our thing, but I loved challenging them as well. But I don't know. But I took it as an opportunity.
And I learned a lot from you over the years.
Really?
When I first,
my
first
1920 you were on.
Yeah, it was 1997, I believe, was one of the first times on one of your panels. Before I got elected, I was a young PC or whatever, and we still have the video of it. It was pretty chaotic.
You have the video of that interview still?
Yes, I can't remember who had the bigger glasses, me or you, but one of us did. And
I remember watching it.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think we'll do it a little different next time from my perspective. But anyway, and then as Jeff said, you always gave us time, which I really appreciate. It wasn't like, oh, here's 2 seconds, and it's like, oh god.
But you also would ask to clarify. Can you clarify what you're talking about there?
Well,
and
you're
just
listening.
gave you another chance to
You're listening to
say
the
it a
interview.
different way as well, right?
Well, I always thought my job was to get information for the people who were watching. So I'm thinking, if I don't understand the explanation, I need more information. Tell me so that I can explain it. And hopefully the people who are watching are going, oh, yeah, now I get it.
I think also we would all realize, or at least I learned really quick and really early on, that a lot of the next stories coming out at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. were what you said. And it was on the ticker, so it was like, "Ooh, this is gonna run a little more than just the morning show." Like they're using some of this stuff for their story.
Well, we were generating.
So you could feed all of it, even if it wasn't a big highlight of the discussion. You could feed the story with your information, and it kind of built
Generated
into it.
some more.
So yeah,
And
it's
then
just opportunity.
whenever I did an interview or gave prep for interviews, because we talked about, we're there for a main topic, a main issue, but there could be, topic number 1, 2, 3 that's still relatable or related to the file or related to the minister. Well, I'd always prep and say, any politician that I was prepping with or myself, oh, by the way, this issue is on such and such, but you also have to remember, you were just in the news 2 days ago about such and such. So let's do a little recap of those Q&As and this issue, that issue. Just be prepared. Better to be over-prepared and not need it than not prepared, and then you get some questions. And I just thought,
And since you asked, because, you only have to ask once, we're still talking about us. But pretty soon we'll ask you what you think about us as well. Yeah. But when I remember the hard interviews, it wasn't because you were hard. It was the topic that was hard. So you were asking the questions. We have to think about how we're going to answer the question, how we're going to be factual and truthful, how we're not going to go down some road and say something that's going to come back, contradict you.
Just don't make it worse.
And then, because what you really want, exactly.
Don't make it worse.
What you really want is
some advice. Whatever you do.
That's the advice you get going in. Don't make it worse.
Yes. If we can hold your ground and break even, just break even.
Get out of here with after your butt.
And you'd leave the studio and I'd have my note thing, because I always like to have notes. One time Tara's like, oh, what do you have? You have your speaking points. I think it was Tanker Malley threatened to
Cross the
floor or something and be
top
speaker
5 demands or something.
And then he left the note on somewheres and Bernard Lord accused and Cleveland Allaby got involved. So then you're asking me and I'm like, I had these notes because I was like, geez, if I say something,
Terry goes, election.
Terry goes, what do you got your note? I said, well, you use notes. Try not to sound too defensive, but I'm like, you got notes with your questions? I said, just a few key points to remind me. And when you went to television and the radio and television, it was a little more. We'll put it up a notch, but you had to be more mindful of the other aspect of looking in the eye and not having all your notes there.
Speaking of notes, I used to go on Thursday nights. Rogers would invite me down. More when I was environment minister. They kind of fizzled out a little bit. But I went in there one evening, just me, and I was talking on the carbon tax and what the provincial government was signing agreements with Ottawa, and I wrote my folder and the table was coming. Jeff's like, what are you doing here? I was like, man, there's a lot to this. There's a lot to this. This is a complicated discussion.
Well, it's not just the 8 crayon holder. It's like the 36 or whatever. And you get the trays coming out just like your file folder with all your speaking points.
So tell us. I mean, you've interviewed several cabinet ministers over time, premiers, federal ministers. Like who was
stands?
And I mean, you don't have to feel bad about excluding us. But like who was some of your favorite people that you had on your show? Some
standouts. Either
that's a hijack question. You want to shelve it?
No.
Yeah, I want to just stop.
Okay, let's move on.
Boy. Richard Hatfield was a smart guy, and it always felt like a sword fight with Richard Hatfield. Frank McKenna was a sincere guy, and in his first term would answer questions honestly. I'm not saying he answered dishonestly after that,
but you know what I mean.
But he learned the skill, right, that you guys are referring to obliquely. He learned how to say less but talk more. Who else? There are just so many. I mean, I didn't interview him at the CBC here, but John Kenneth Galbraith, brilliant man, and one of the first interviews I ever did in Sudbury, Ontario, and I'm sitting across the table from John Kenneth Galbraith, and economics, I couldn't spell economics, but he treated me with respect, and we had a good conversation. Boy.
Well, who were some, say, even difficult interviews?
Jacques Chrétien.
Jacques
Chrétien was so he was running. He needed a seat.
Okay.
So he was going to Beausejour, I think, and he was campaigning and he was making himself available to the local media. Anyway, I asked him a pretty smug question, and I said, well, what is it that you're offering the people of Beausejour? Why would they elect you? and he says, "How many of my speeches have you read?" And I said,
Question with a question.
"None. We have other people to do that," or something lame like that. And he goes, "Well, if you haven't read my speeches, how are you going to criticize me, or how are you going to ask that question? Read my speeches." Anyway, I thought, boom. So I was knocked out, took a 10 count, and I found out after the show that that same exchange had happened the night before on the Francophone side, on Radio Canada. He did the same thing. So that was the thing that he had, that he used to avoid any difficult questions.
That was the
Yeah, he was a master. He was a master for that.
Yeah, Brian Mulrooney was smooth, really, really slick. Boy, it's all a blur, really.
It's all a mashup.
That's interesting.
So and if anything comes to mind too, then we'll jump in.
I want to ask you guys a question, though.
Sure.
Okay.
That's how we'll wrap up. That's how we'll wrap up this segment.
Well, this could go on for a couple of segments.
Oh.
So I try to stay out of. I don't follow politics anymore because it was just like it was my job for so long that it's nice to have the space in my head for my grandson and doing other stuff. But I'm watching what's happening on the macro scale nationally, politically, and Mark Carney has, he's a wartime prime minister, so he's got the country's support. Pierre Poilievre is trying really hard to get some traction, but I don't think it's happening. And I just want to know from you guys, because I think you have well-established conservative credentials, right? I don't think anybody would doubt that.
Argue that.
So looking at the federal Conservative Party right now, is it the leader or is it the party that's resulting in no traction?
Well, I've been watching this as well, as you could well imagine, and the style and the strategy that the federal Conservative Party had been using for so long while Trudeau was the prime minister. Easy target, big target, and the messaging kind of went along that path. And then just out of nowhere, Carney comes along, and Pierre and everybody around him you got to switch it up. You got to pivot and come up with new strategy.
Because this guy's not an amateur.
No.
I mean, an amateur politician, but
yeah,
he's got a
politician, but on the world stage, he's not. And he's got some pretty capable people around him. Dominic LeBlanc is like probably one of the best messaging. As far as messaging
Steve McKinnon's
goes, strategy.
in there too.
Yeah,
Senior Brunswickers.
So when I think getting that traction back, because it just swung right to Carney. All of the momentum swung to Carney, and he knocked this wind out of Pierre's sails, obviously, and
they didn't pivot.
They didn't pivot in time before the last election, and I think it's just been difficult to pivot back into something that would work. And I mean, Carney's got a year in. You could argue, some would argue that the honeymoon is over, but I don't think it is. And like you say, it's wartime, and Trump is keeping Carney popular. It's hard to bust in on that, I think.
Well, exactly what Jeff said. I think that when people get a sense that the leader is out of touch, is away from the realities of the fears of the country and the hopes of the country. It started when Carney became leader, Trump became president, and Poilievre was still talking about the carbon tax. And for the country, that was not really the fullest priority. It was our unity and our national sovereignty and how the U.S. was going to impose. And Carney has been able to provide that steady assurance at the wheel. Going on Joe Rogan is probably not gonna.
Well, he's trying for a demo. You guys know what's behind that. He was trying. He needs to connect with a demographic.
Save his base
that
right
Joe
now.
Rogan represents.
Yeah, and I would also add too. You mentioned the party. Well, then his people, inner circle people that follow him in particular, sometimes have found themselves in a really nasty, angry position, not only like publicly, but with other so-called like-minded conservatives and progressive conservatives. So when that trickles down at the local levels, it doesn't really go over that well. So
Jack?
Well, he hasn't been able to transition from opposition to prime minister in waiting. And he's sort of the bulldog and prime minister.
So what do you
waiting.
mean?
Well, like Frank McKenna was genius at being when he became the leader, from what I read, and Ray Fournette was the bulldog, and then Frank McKenna became the nice guy. Like, he shouldn't be
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, and he probably hasn't done that even during the elections. He's still sort of the bulldog fella, and you're seen as an opposition, not a prime minister in waiting. I've gotten to meet him a few times, one-on-one. And you'll hear about a lot of politicians this way, but one-on-one, great fella, great to talk to, funny, personable, sincere, but the public persona, he comes across like that, eating that apple. I still cannot stand watching that. It's so condescending. And I think
that's it.
People
That's
are just
the word.
tired of that. Mm-hmm. That sort of behavior. I watched him a good chunk on Joe Rogan, and I thought he was great. I thought he did great on the international, especially how he really did good at not beating up on Carney and the
he was
Liberals.
respectful.
He talked about it's wartime. I'm not gonna go down that road, negative and things, and that was impressive. I thought he did really well on Joe Rogan, but I think the runway is there's no room left on the runway. I actually think it's done. I think there needs to be a new leader. It's just you can just see it. It's not gaining traction.
What's it say about his intelligence when, as you say, one-on-one, he's a guy you'd gladly give your vote to, versus the condescending guy that you see on the national stage? Like, he must know, his handlers must know that the condescension isn't playing with the middle.
No.
I would think that they would know, but then again, you sometimes give credit to people and the inside people, and you think there must be a strategy around this. But he keeps doing the same thing. So.
I wonder, there are two prominent names in the Conservative Party in Canada right now that I think may be creating part of the problem with the traction. I think Daniel Smith is one. The whole Let's Get Alberta to Separate movement. It's aligned with the conservative side of the spectrum. And Pierre Poilievre, who, that Maple MAGA label, I think sticks to him. How do you stop those two people from damaging the brand of the party any more?
Well, I think with Daniel Smith, it depends on what end of the country you're on, or what province you're in. So, but by and large, is it kind of seen out on this end in Ontario, Quebec, not that positive. But I think in general, with politics, people be even more complacent than they ever have been. Even like when we were really involved early on, people were complacent then, but it has continued. So it's
complacent
kind of
in
well, does it really matter if people get involved to make change within their own parties? As for an example, is party politics really the best mechanism for people to get involved in? And the complacency around, okay, well, whoever really wants it the hardest and the most have fire in their belly, they're the ones that get to have it and keep it, to be leader and put that extra emphasis or effort out there. And it just seems like the progressives in particular, kind of don't really have a home necessarily, but they're not really that eager to push to make a change.
I'm not certain that there's anything that can, like, Daniel Smith is on her own. She's got her own entity, her own identity in Alberta, and that's what's working for her. And it really stems from, the 10 years of Trudeau and the way they made Trudeau to be a hater of the West, which there's probably a good argument there. It runs in the family. It was in the blood. But when it comes to Poilievre, once you're labeled with, when you have that Maple MAGA label, it's you can't shake a label. Like, it's tough.
So what Jack's saying, get rid of him.
Well, I mean,
I didn't say get rid of them, but I said I don't think there's any runway left on the.
Yeah, I mean, that's if their numbers continue to stay where they're at,
it's
and
perfectly
Carney
honest.
stays where his
honest.
at, then
well,
the party has to decide. Like, I mean, they voted overwhelmingly to support him at the leadership review, but
It'll probably be another lost
They
election.
were all friends.
It'll be another lost election, probably.
Well, and if you look at the history, we've always had strong, opinionated premiers across Canada,
Always.
liberal, PC, that sort of thing. But I guess what it shows is that, how good of a job people like Stephen Harper and Brian Mulroney, Bernard Lord here in the province, how great of a job they did with the conservative and the progressive conservative movement of keeping keeping the alliance, I guess, for lack of a better word, but keeping people together.
Let's come back to this discussion. We need to take a few minutes for the folks down at CHCO, but we will come back to this. Just a few minutes.
I'll stay.
Hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 167. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers. And we're very privileged and honored to have Terry Seguin, no stranger to the people of New Brunswick, a long-time broadcaster, journalist in New Brunswick. And actually, we grew up with you, Terry, through media on both sides, Jack and you as colleagues, I guess, as part of it. And then on the other side of the microphone with you, Terry, way back when Jack we first remember meeting Terry was in middle school at Wasis Road, called now Ridgeview.
I was trying to graduate.
And Terry did a job
career day.
And
you impressed the interest.
You impressed us, Terry, and that really gave Jack the inspiration to go into media, go into broadcast journalism.
Yeah.
So you had an impact.
And now you're in real estate.
Now I'm in real estate.
So
you should get a commission.
Journalism is fun, but it doesn't pay a lot.
It was tough. It was one of the best jobs I've had. I did that for 9 years on KHJ, C-High, Capital FM, the Fox, whatever they're all called now, the Pure and the Bounce or something. Yeah. And but great career, but 9 years, and it was the right move to move on into communications. It was tougher to pay the bills, and even though it was a great job, but and now, really local private radio, very non-existent, having newsrooms. So it was probably a good move at the time. It was tough, but it was a good move to move on. Yeah. But Terry, if you look at your bio here, 45 years in broadcast journalism. You've hosted many CBC programs, not only provincially here on CBC TV, CBC Radio, Information Morning in the Fredericton region, but also nationally. You've had the chance to host CBC Midday, the National, News World Morning, and then some awards. You've won a national radio and television, an RTNDA investigative reporting award nationally, several regional.
Can I tell you a story about that?
I just want to finish one more point. In 2018, you received.
Good job, Jack.
You've
been waiting for years. We've been waiting for years.
Terry, shut up.
We've been waiting for that high leg reel there. Thanks, Jack, on behalf of all of us.
Yeah. No, but in 2018, you received really the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Radio and Television National Association. That's just amazing. But yes, now tell us a story. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. I'm surprised that anybody actually wants to hear my voice after all of that time. It's you get away from the business and you see yourself as, well, I'm just
Joe Blow.
I'm just ordinary. I'm a grandpa on a bicycle. That's my life now. But pleasure to be here. I love to chat.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned something, and then you said, "Oh, I got a story about that." Was that the National Investigative Reporter?
Right. So this was an award, Radio, Television, Digital News Association.
Oh, thank you.
Or something like that. It's changed a couple of times. This was a national award for investigative journalism, and I submitted a story that I had done that was basically about, I think it was the McKenna government getting rid of the weigh scales, like the weigh stations.
On the highways?
Reducing personnel. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's interesting. So I found a guy who was willing to talk, who said, if they do that, here are the consequences. And the consequences aren't going to be good. There's a safety issue for sure. And I'm not sure, what all the rest of the arguments were. But I did the story, submitted it, and it won. And the National, this was the best investigative
Gonna get to the
television
bottom
news
of this.
report in the country. So, a career highlight. And you'd think, boy, I wish I could have gone to that ceremony. But I didn't know that my piece had been accepted. I didn't even know that it won until I came into work on Monday morning, the weekend that the award ceremony had. And there was a plaque sitting on my desk. So 2 of my colleagues who had gone.
So, like, landlines didn't work then to let you know, or what?
There was some
let's get
political BS happening
Internal.
in the CBC there. Yeah.
Who got to go?
So you found out Monday afterwards.
Right, and it was like, oh, sorry, we forgot to tell you.
Oh, that's the BS you're talking about, yeah.
That's and I thought, wow, that would have been the highlight
of any journalism.
My career, to get a national award for that. And you didn't even tell me that it had been nominated and it had been accepted.
Wow.
Another story.
So you had 2 colleagues that went?
Yeah, and deservedly so. They did they did some excellent work, and they got an award for their excellent work. But I thought the process that you'd have to go through to say, that's my employee, he's done a really good job, he's going to get a national award, but I'm not going to tell him that he got the award.
Yeah, stuff like this, we wouldn't know all type of internal kind of
behind the scenes stuff.
like small p politics with jealousy and ambition and.
Anyway, one other story about a story that I did. You guys okay with this?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Okay, so I was working in Sydney, Nova Scotia, for ATV at the time.
Well, how old were you then?
Oh, like, geez, I don't know, 60. No, I was.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I was young.
This
I
man
was
is
young.
amazing.
So that's, age isn't important.
So that's before you came to CBC then. You
Right.
were in the private
That's
world,
what I meant.
and then
That's
you're
what
on
I-
ATV.
that was the better question.
Wow, ATV.
Right.
Wow.
So one afternoon, we're playing some kind of a card game I have a friend in Sydney, and this young veterinarian has arrived in Sydney, and so the 3 of us are playing a game, and we're talking. I have a cat that I inherited from another relationship, and it was destroying the furniture, and she said, I can take the cat's claws out. Anyway, so we had a conversation. She said, but, there's a chance if I put them under, they might not come out. And that happens in hospitals. In fact, that just happened up at a hospital here in Sydney. And I thought, what? So I started to do some research, and I found out the person who had died, and the cause of death on the death certificate said uncertain, or it wasn't clear. Anyway, and that person, the family of that person who died, told me that there was another person that died recently as well.
Oh, wow.
Same thing.
So the trend here.
So I find out that the hospital was using an anesthesiologist that wasn't properly trained. The regular person left, and this person was doing the job and administered the wrong kind of anesthetic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or volume. It could have been a volume thing. Anyway, as a result of that story, there was a royal commission in Nova Scotia looking into, and I like to think that by doing that story and exposing a flaw in the system, that maybe that mistake wouldn't be made again, and no more lives would be
Possibly save lives.
Well, I would say lives were saved.
But that's why you.
got
That's
goosebumps.
part of the reason why you do those stories.
That's journalism.
Right? That's it.
That's
journalism that makes a difference,
Yes.
as opposed to what happens so much today. Like, how do you have networks like Fox and Sinclair, and they're not doing journalism, they're doing cheerleading, they're doing propaganda. I think our concept as a society of what journalism is, what journalism was meant to do, has been blown up. And now, instead of having journalists who are asking questions about explain your policy, justify your policy, watching the government, we have people who have built entire networks on doing exactly the opposite of that. And I think that's why there are so many problems that we have.
No, but I'm glad you're talking about that, because normally people blame politicians as the only reason. But I think you're right. It's a collective.
Goes hand in hand, right?
It's a collective of the industry as well. Politicians feed into, and it's a vice versa. But what's your reflection about this in Canada? Like, is maybe not to the extreme, but I think more and more too. I don't know, but they're like magazine shows and not
and smaller to no newsrooms,
yes.
Cutbacks,
and you're no stranger to the cutbacks. I mean, like over the years, I mean, it's just been a gradual. We used to tell us about all the shows we used to have at 5, 5:15, and 6, and now we're a half hour, not an hour, and now it's But this is reality, I guess, for us. But where did we go?
The media landscape I can speak about the CBC, but remembering that I'm like 4 years removed.
Yeah, I know.
5 years removed.
Things
so
changed.
It's probably an entirely different studio than what I remember. In fact, I know that it is a different studio.
It is.
I think the need for 24 hours of information, and I'm using information carefully. I'm not using the word news.
Right.
It started with CNN and OJ, right? You've got a 24-hour news network, but you don't have 24 hours worth of news. So you got to fill that space with something else that might look like news. It's information.
Yeah.
Right? So if we stretch the meaning of news a little bit, it can now encompass all of this information. And that has affected our journalism, what we focus on as journalists, whether we ask journalists to look at that particular story. It's not all news driven now.
That's a really good thought. It's like kind of like the filler, the side stories.
I have one good thought probably every 2 months.
And
you're lucky that it happened here today.
Well, it's recorded. And what I want to compare it to is, in a way, when I was in law school, they're like, "Oh, you're a good speaker. You'll probably, you're whatever." And I'm like, there's a difference between speaking in court and speaking in the legislature. In the legislature, we're trained to fill in time.
Tell a story.
To talk long, fill in 40 minutes, fill in 2 hours. And so then it's your analogy about the news cycle. You're really filling in a whole bunch of stuff that maybe isn't that relevant. In law, we have to say, get to your point in 2 minutes, like boom, boom. What are you trying to say? Yeah, counselor.
Right.
Yeah. But the same idea, I think, in a way that there's a lot of wasted space.
Oh yeah.
Well,
the longer I sat in the legislature, the more I saw that, we're beating around the bush here for 2 weeks when we could just vote on the budget tomorrow.
Why is that?
It's just the way the law is. That's the tradition. That's the tradition of the legislature.
The rules say 12 days, 2 speeches each, and this and that. And
you'd have to change that by vote, and could you?
Yeah,
even?
Yeah, you could.
And that would
initiate.
That would create a whole ruckus that would be a complete distraction from a terrible budget.
We've had little subcommittees before that would look at the rules and how can you modernize and change it into committee. And usually there's agendas.
Because honestly, I'm going to be frank. A lot of the speeches these days are not very good. So why would you want to sit and listen to that?
You don't.
For 12 days or whatever it is. It's like, okay, if you have something relevant to say, talk about it.
Are you saying the art of oratory is gone? It doesn't exist?
It's fading. Although I don't really watch it that much anymore, to be honest.
Who's a great orator that you like politically?
Oh, you know what? We should take a quick little break.
And
then come back to that.
We'll come back to that because there could be a few. There could be a few over time.
Okay.
Who we worked
All right.
with and who we watched.
So let's just take a few more minutes, go back to our information specialists, I guess, and stakeholders down at CHCO, and we'll be right back.
Hi there. Welcome back to the Carr Brothers show. It's episode 167. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jody, the third of the three Carr Brothers. Jack, how are
Well-
we making out here tonight?
Well, this has been a great interview. We've got
I want to ask you, Jack.
well, we're doing good. You're not too hot here on the hot seat. Longtime broadcast journalist Terry Seguin in the studio with us. He's been retired from CBC for the last 4 years, and it's been great to have you on our show, Terry. And we got to ask, what is it like to be the one?
no.
Although you've only really answered one or two questions, the rest of them have been firing at us. But what is it like to answer questions in an interview when you're really the one for 45 years been asking the questions?
I hate it.
He's got answering
I hate it.
Yes.
You know, look, I sympathize with people who, you know, you're in a studio, you're in front of a live mic, and the host you may or may not know or may not understand asks a question, and the minute the host's voice stops, you have to have an answer. There's no, you can't reflect. You can't say, oh, that's a good question. Let me just think about that. No, because you're conditioned, we're all conditioned that
No dead
you got
air.
to start talking.
No dead air.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you don't know what's coming out of that person's mouth. And it might be something shocking. It might be something more complex than you were expecting, and you have to think about it. No, I hate being interviewed.
Well, I always thought, like we never objected to an interview request for Terry over the years, and but I always think, you guys jump in too, that you always made me anyway feel welcome. Not that it was going to
really-
be a
it was
landslide
Wasn't
easy
gonna be a
interview,
slam
but
dunk.
No,
Just
he,
slam dunk.
he put us in a trance. It was
That's
that
right.
trance with that voice.
It's
that
the same stuff that they spray on you when you go into like the shopping center. I'm not going to say a particular brand name, but it's where I buy my tires from Canada. They spray you with that stuff, and it's like, whoa! Next thing you know, you're in pots and pans.
But this is great. We could keep going.
well,
There was some.
we had a question before the last segment.
No, we'll have to go back to
we
the
on
tapes
And
see
I
what
can't
What
remember.
did Terry ask us? You mean our question or his question?
I have a question. Can I help?
Yeah.
Well, I thought we'd buy some time, and so we got to cut this off, and it was the end of the second segment. But now we forget what it is. But
Okay, so we were talking about politics, I think, and in particular the Conservative Party. And Jack mentioned that it's time to get a new leader. And
I said the runway was short. There's no runway left.
So the thing that I'm wondering is, the thing that I've noticed about the Conservative Party is that there is more of a religious influence. And I'm not talking like United, but just like there's like that whole MAGA thing infiltrating the party. In Canada, I think, it appears to me. What do you guys think? Is that happening?
That wasn't the question you asked earlier.
No. I branched off into something more complicated.
Yeah.
And I think we saw some evidence of that provincially too, didn't we?
Well, like I guess they call it, what do they call it, populist sort of campaigning and things, and probably had an influence from the United States brand of politics anyway over the last several years.
Isn't it just getting back to tradition? Isn't it always been?
Well,
Yeah.
I think
don't know.
politics has evolved, not just in Canada, the U.S., but around the world. You see it in Europe, like far right, far left,
Polarized.
and the middle is, like Jody said earlier, there doesn't feel to the people in the middle that there's a home. So the other two are working at it. The left and the right, they're working at it. They're doing their thing. Now, there was always, I felt, maybe not a predominant religious side to the Conservative part of the party, but there was always some discussion on that. The Liberals, they had their factions of it as well, but not as predominant as PCs, I don't think. But I think as time has gone on, especially with COVID, it's just become a lot more evident in a lot of different jurisdictions, and Is it cyclical? I don't know.
Is it going to work in Canada? Is the MAGA ideology going to work in Canada?
I don't see it.
That's just where I'm not sure if it's tied directly to religion.
Yeah.
Or if it's more.
I think it's just
conservative mindset, or I don't know what it is.
Maybe it's more than. Maybe it's all three, or all.
Yeah. Combination.
Yeah.
But we've seen the reaction to Poilievre in the election.
Yep.
I mean, that's an indication, but maybe Canadians don't want that. But I still think he was more out of touch on the primary issues of the country at that election, not so much under the sovereignty of the country.
If people get a place to use their voice, they're going to use it. If they get a pedestal to get on, they're going to use it.
Yeah,
and that's what happened provincially, obviously, with Fétine coming in, and she found herself a way to get in and start pushing her message, and that's.
Well, what was the conversation in the party like?
There wasn't.
What were you hearing from?
No, there
from
was
your
no
people?
conversation.
Like the people who
you could see it split the party, basically in the leading up to the 2024 election. There was
a divide.
There was a divide, and when you're divided, especially conservatives, you lose every time. Like talk federally, you've got to look after 5 different factions of the party. Like when you're on the Liberal side, Liberals are Liberals. And they can come together and win.
So what are the factions? I don't know the factions.
Well, you get your far west, right? Out far west, the prairies. They're different than Ontario and Atlantic Canada. You get into Ontario and Quebec. Ontario PCs are much like the Maritime PCs or Atlantic Canadian PCs now. And then you get your Maritimers, and we've all got different needs. And for a conservative leader to pull that all together is not easy. And that's been the case for a lot of different parties and leaders. I mean, you have PCs and the Reform Party and Alliance, and they joined to try to beat down the Liberals, and it worked for a while.
Who was the last leader to do that successfully?
Brian Mulroney.
Well,
Stephen
after
Harper
that was Stephen Harper with the merger. Yes.
Yeah.
Stephen Harper
let's
was
not forget that.
with the merger, and now there's so many people that voted him out that are still in our party that wish he was back.
And it's a result of, I guess, Brian Mulroney or the distaste at that time that brought us down to the 2 seats that then allowed all these factions at that point. But I think that's
even
it is history.
Like
even the I don't know the history tremendously, but even the Progressive Conservative Party in New Brunswick was a merger. Progressives and the Conservatives merged to form the Progressive Conservative Party. Way back, I don't even know when, but way before my time. When they were handing out the contracts for the railroad. Everybody knows that. But everyone knows, like, it's not a slam dunk for progressive conservative or conservatism anyway, that you have to have all the stars line up, the platform, the leader, the party, the slogans, all this, candidates. It's not a slam dunk to win every election. And then the Liberals, well, you have to be tired. Canadians or New Brunswickers have to be tired to vote for them. They have to slip up on their campaigning. They have to have a Trudeau where people are against you voting you out. So I think conservatives were usually behind by the solid vote or the base vote, and then you have to have those factors in order to win.
Yeah. Okay, let's do an exercise. Build me the perfect Conservative Party leader.
Oh,
like in name, like in
that's tough.
Where are they from? What are their policies?
So that's really tough because it's so easy to lose part of the party if you can't get into the middle of all of them, and that's very difficult these days, I think.
Mm-hmm. It shows
very difficult. And you got to be pro-energy, obviously. Which
from Alberta? Okay, you're talking about Alberta.
Are we talking about a Canadian leader or New Brunswick?
Leader, yeah. Well, yeah. What are you talking about?
Well, you got to be
Canadian.
Yeah, you got to be pan-country.
Yeah, you do. You have to be pan-country. You have to be pro-energy. You have to be. You have to have some sense of. I wouldn't call religion, but faith. I think as well. But you also allow people with all those voices to come in, and that's the tricky part. When you have all those different factions that come in, because you need all the tent.
Okay,
as a conservative to win.
You can't say you're having a big tent with a big stick either. Like, right. You can't.
And then,
what's that mean? Well, you can't say, "Oh, I want a big tent," but it can only be with my philosophy. Rules. You have to understand and respect, seek to understand other conservatives that don't align with you. If you're a leader, you've got to be able to compromise and work things out. and not just my way or the highway, because you'll never make a big tent that way.
And that's provincial, federal, municipal. Like,
and plus, federally, you need Quebec. You need a certain portion of Quebec really to win now, and that's not easy.
So how do you come up with policy then if you have to satisfy each of those disparate elements?
Carefully.
Yeah.
Can you? Is it possible?
It must be possible. It's been done.
Yeah. But Brian Rooney, Stephen Harper, Bernard Lord,
Johnny McDonald.
There's trading going on behind the scenes, though, right? It's not just, here's my policy, it's going to solve all of your problems. You're saying to one faction, okay, you give up on this and you'll get this 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be that specific, but it could just be a leader that can galvanize the troops or the people, the candidates, the party, the nation, based on a set of the values and the feel of what the country is at that moment.
Tell us that story, Joe, when or maybe you can or can't, when Brian Mulroney visited and he spoke and said, and I'm not sure you can be specific, but just give us the highlights where, you know, he was low in the polls.
Well, it was when I was campaigning door to door. In the federal election. One of the federal elections was Greg Thompson, former MP in Southwest New Brunswick, but he also had the Gagetown area.
Right.
And at that point, the village of Gagetown, we were at Bob Corbett's house, and Bob Corbett being a former MLA and former member of Parliament. And they were talking about the good old days in the Brian Mulroney caucus and caucus, and a couple hundred MPs, large majority starting out. But what they talked about, which was fascinating, but they talked about Brian Mulroney having the skill and the mastery of wielding caucus. And it reminds me of that. And
they'd be home on the weekend, and it would be 15% in the polls. And
they would be like 6 or 7% in the polls. And they were all outside of caucus, getting ready to go in on Parliament Hill to meet Brian Mulroney and put their fists down and say, we're going to talk about trying to get rid of Pierre Peltier, trying to say, we're not putting up with this anymore. And if we don't speak and get him out. Anyways, Mulroney would come in apparently in every caucus meeting and have the newspapers of the day. Mm-hmm. And he had this master, they were saying, of being able to pull his caucus together. And then he'd go through the newspaper and he'd rattle off some headline and make comments and make jokes, and they'd be laughing. He said by the end of it here, we were going to push him over the cliff there. The cliff, but in the end of it, we're all rolling in the aisles. He's making us laugh. We're patting each other's back. We're all ready to go again at 6% in the polls, and that's how he was able to just keep us together. He said they both said it was masterful, and losing all the seats but two, in that 1993 election. It was a big part with Mulroney, but it wasn't really. I mean, the polls went back up with Kim Campbell, and there were a lot of mistakes there. But.
And Chrétien changed a lot of his promise commitments after he got elected in, and history shows that those Mulroney policies really...
It really does. Bernard Lord, in my perspective, being in his caucus, he was, I say master, but... he was very effective.
I like Bernard
very
Lord.
Effective.
I liked him. He was. He seemed like a really, really bright guy.
Very bright guy, and socially not as in tune, probably. But I think it was a self-comment, maybe walking down the hallway, maybe not thinking that people, you're the premier and they want to see you and they want you to wave to them, but maybe not thinking that's what people want, where other politicians might just galvanize that. But he had the policy aspect. But one of the biggest highlights, and how did we get onto this? But
what happened?
We'll talk about orators, I guess, was your question, of your masterful orators and who we liked could be effective. But when Bernard Lord, line by line, now, for good or for bad, but we were going in a real dangerous hole with official languages, and there were court challenges, and Bernard had to wield the official language, a modernization of the official languages. As I said, there were court challenges, and he had to pull us together, talk about these different kind of north-south in New Brunswick language. And he went line by line in the Official Languages Act, and there was pushback on this whole. It's really we're part of the core party, part of the old Conservatives, and he said, look, if we don't do this, then it's going to be a lot worse when it goes to court. So he was really good at going line by line, finding compromise, municipalities at a certain percentage, whatever. And so he was good at that. And when he brought Louis Robichaud on the floor of the legislature, And I think Bev Harrison was the speaker. I mean, you just don't bring people in and sit. And we're sitting there on the floor, Louis Robichaud, and he comes over and stands in the premier's seat. I'm getting goosebumps now because it was an amazing experience. I'm crying because, and no one was going to say, "Oh, objection." He was, and to see a former premier like him, and then he was crying because it was
an enormous moment.
It was an enormous moment, yeah. And how we got all of that around to the question, I'm not sure, but those were leaders that could you knew it was their time, and you couldn't really explain it maybe, but they were effective.
Well, we've got to. I think we'll extend this for our YouTube and our podcast, but for CHCO, we've got to wrap up. We've got about a minute or so, Terry.
Wow,
1 minute.
Fast.
Could be a bingo. What do you want to part on here? You've got less than a minute now. What you have coming up? What's in store? Your reflection on this.
I'm hoping that the Habs are going to go beyond the first round. I'm really impressed with the team, young, talented, and maybe a team of destiny if we can get past the Bolts. Pleasure to see you guys again.
Same here.
I've enjoyed the conversation. Thanks very much.
Well, we got to do it again.
Yes, absolutely.
And like I said to our viewers on CHCO, we're going to continue this for just a little bit on our YouTube channel, this broadcast, and on our podcast. Terry Seguin, thanks very much for joining us, and we want to thank our viewers as well. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Hey there, guys. It's welcome back. It's episode 167. This is the bonus part. We don't do this very often, but when you have a great interviewer on a roll, Terry Seguin. So this you'll see on YouTube and on the podcast, but not on CHCO. So those folks, they get an extra bonus. Like you said, Jeff, this is overtime.
This is overtime. Bonus segment.
I have a question for you guys.
Well, first though, can I ask you something?
This is the second time.
Twice.
So we were Terry Seguin, as everyone listening and watching knows. Terry Seguin, former broadcast journalist, retired for the last 4 years, and think of a lot of a handful of journalists that enter into politics. Is there a future for Terry being a candidate
for once and for all
for any level of government? But do you foresee that is it something that you're going to give consideration and not rule out, or what's your thoughts on that?
So my wife
we should ask
thinks that I
first.
am wasting. She has to put up with all my whinging, all my whining, right? I open the paper and it's like, wow.
I can't believe it.
Like, yes, dear.
Yeah.
So she thinks I need an outlet, and she's probably right. But you know what? No, I'll be 70 years old in August.
Wow. You look great.
You look great.
Thank you.
Terry.
Thank you.
It's not just the T-shirt.
70 years old in August.
Wow.
And
August when, Terry?
August 5th.
Okay.
I'm a boomer. No one needs another white guy in politics, right? It's my time is coming.
An old
gone.
white guy, you mean? Old white guy.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
right. 'Cause
energy. We need young people with ideas. My ideas are from the 1970s and 80s.
So, I think I know the answer. Have you been asked in the past to run? And
Everybody
has.
has.
I could see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any sort of opportunity or any sort of time where.
Thanks for having that meeting too, by the
way. any time where you really considered it like very, very hard and made it and was a hard decision.
Okay. So yes. Many offers. My ego wanted.
Oh, everyone loves
my
to be
ego
asked.
wanted.
Yes.
It.
Everyone loves to be asked.
Oh my God! Yes, they're asking me. Yeah, I'm keen. But then I would take some time to think about it, and I realized that I couldn't honestly ask people to give me their support, to go out and give me their vote, if I wasn't going to do the best job I could do.
Yeah.
And I knew that within me, as much as I would like to be able to stand up and ask a question in the legislature or in the council chambers, that I wouldn't devote as much time as was necessary to do a complete job. I like doing other things. Like I like getting on my bike and going out to Peniac, or I like going skiing, or going to the cottage and sitting on the dock. I really like my leisurely time. I guess that's a fancy way of saying I'm kind of lazy.
No, I think you know what you want and what
Yes.
you don't want. Because when, as you know, like when you're elected, it's 24, and probably more now than when we were out of it, or in it.
Yeah,
But it's a
actually-
24/7 job. If there's a 24-hour news cycle, well, there's a 24/7 as a politician as well. Just so many channels to get a hold of an MLA.
And Terry, you mentioned like being in broadcasting for 45 years and more, and then that internal or that stress that you didn't realize was stress, like that happens with long-serving politicians as well. And Jeff, I know, has talked a bit about it, but I had 19 years, Trevor Holder 20 some years, and maybe some of the other ones. But I know that when you leave, and maybe because I did it I was so young, like just that's all I did really, and then you didn't realize like Thursday, Friday comes along, and you're anticipating the weekend and the events you have to go to, and then just the schedule, and then your media interviews, and it just the whole thing, right? It just keeps rolling. So then when you're done, it's like, oh, wow. And then you have to go out in public, and you're not really sure how to act.
You have to be on, but you have to be on.
You
though.
think
And you
have
still
to be
have to be on.
Yeah.
So I remember going to, it was a golf tournament, but it was a week scramble or whatever, and I'd always have to bring greetings, and I'm there at the thing, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, and then in the end, it's like I don't have to do anything. I guess I don't have to do anything. So then it's like, but there's a lot of recuperating with the
recovery,
the recovery of the.
You guys, all three of you
borderline
feel
burnout.
that?
Oh yeah.
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 And are you there yet? Are you completely recovered?
I feel pretty good.
I
I feel pretty
yeah.
good.
Took
Most days.
I feel
Yeah,
pretty
Jeff's
good.
the
Yeah.
more recent.
Well,
So
I
what's
mean, I've
the-
only been out for 2 years, and
Yeah,
that 10 years, the first 8 were great. But then as you get into
Well,
cabinet
especially
a couple
the last
times,
two
and
were
there's
tough,
there's
yeah.
a lot- yeah, the last 2 were tough. They were still great,
Well, yeah,
but they
you
were tough. There was a lot going on.
I would say you weren't
it
treated
takes.
properly at the end of your political career. I thought you got a raw deal there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gotta respect process, and that was part of what I was going down the path of. But it was, I've spoken publicly on the morning show with David Cochran on election night about how when you get to a place where decisions are either made for you or made before you even get in the room. Like, that's not what I was hired to do. I was hired to have a voice for people on the outside, and that's actually a struggle probably for most people in cabinet
Right.
too.
Oh, expectations.
Not realizing it. Like, when there's a decision made, you got to stand by it, or you got to go.
So then
So that's hard, because I thrived on 4 years of opposition, just rallying for people and organizations and beliefs for people, and just pounding it hard. Like, my goal was to get on the top fold of the Daily Gleaner on the front page. And I did that several times.
Why was that? Why did that matter?
It just, for me, it felt like, well, there, I've got the topic to where it needs to be. Or when I was in opposition, I probably visited your show, but it wouldn't be as predominant because I wasn't a minister. But I was a critic of transportation for 4 years. There was lots to talk about, and actually there was. It was the salt contracts in the province, and I hammered on that one because the province decided they weren't going to renew the salt mining in Penobscot, and they were going to ship it in from outside, and that had a lot to do with royalties and different things. And the minister of the day swore up and down that was still the best salt around, and I knew it wasn't. The workers in the salt domes knew it wasn't. The people that buy and sell the salt knew it wasn't, and that was a topic that I was able to go on your show and talk about, and it was those things. So you do that for 4 years, and then you switch to government side, and then there's a certain level of, caucus consensus on things or cabinet solidarity. So you might see things that you're not 100% behind, but if cabinet and caucus
But you'd
have a
sell it
consensus.
even if it
It's
didn't
harder.
reflect your personal.
It's harder to sell it. It's harder on the record. You got to be careful. And then it gets to the point where, well, they aren't. There's not real discussions going on and things like that. And then it was hard. It was a hard couple of years at the end. So,
because I would say there's always
it's hard to get over that.
There was an element. There's an element of that when I was there, and there's always an element of that kind of center control at the Premier's office or the Chief of Staff, and they disrespect or the whatever decisions are made. And I've been in government, MLA, opposition MLA, cabinet, and so there's that element where this kind of internal, like, what do they think they're doing? They're not treating us like this, and they're making decisions. But the leader needs to know when to let the valve off and when to kind of give some and have a little bit, Jack was talking about, compromise. When you have leaders that are capable of doing that and basically biting their tongue, swallowing their pride, being the leader and not going down in with henpecking, then they're able to control that kind of ebb and flow. But when they don't...
engage the temperature.
Yeah, when they don't.
Engage
So when
the
I saw
temperature.
like Jeff and Trevor and Dorothy, and they're protesting at a question period, it's the first indication, like they went downstairs, they're what? They're what? They didn't go into a question
So
period.
what were you thinking watching this all unfold?
I thought something really bad is happening. This must have gotten so bad because, I mean, I've been there. Trevor and I, Kirk McDonald, we're
Probably
going
all
down,
wanted to do something
We're walking
like
down
that.
to the train bridge for a walk over recess or something from the legislature, thinking, what are they doing? Why are they thinking that? And then you have some, but as I said, there's some release. There's some hashing it out a little bit. There's there's some honest good faith. And then when I saw this happen, because certainly Trevor Holder would never be disloyal or but it must have been so bad for them not to feel like they were being at least heard. Like I always said, if Premier, I might not agree with you. I'm going to tell you what I think, but at least listen to me, and then you're going to make a decision.
I think there was 8 of us.
But they weren't
Eight
they weren't even being like listened to. So it's just like that's bad. That's
me,
really bad.
To me, it's an issue of integrity, and I think that is something that is really important in our society and in our political structure. My understanding is that it was an integrity issue for you. You were being asked to make a decision on something that you felt you did not have enough information yet, and you wanted to hear from more experts.
Yeah.
So
that was the
integrity.
issue.
You can't ask me to vote for something that's going to be as contentious as this without us covering all our bases. Because if you do that, it's easier to sell. You can sell it.
Well, maybe you can
logically.
compromise some things if you have more information.
Right.
Too, right?
So the integrity that you stood up for, honorable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But that stuff wears on you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, and I mean, we all go full tilt when we're elected. It's 7 days a week, and we thrive. We love it, getting out with the people.
And
but it does, like Jody says, when you're done, it's like, wow, I don't have to do that.
From my perspective on that issue with Blaine Higgs, I didn't appreciate the disrespect of how he treated caucus, but how he treated people that were affected by the decision. And you can agree on policy or disagree on policy or think you're in the right direction or the wrong direction, but when your character comes out in a way that disrespects
especially when you don't understand it.
Other humans and other human races, regardless of their differences, that's where
Would David Allward have handled that differently?
He would have definitely handled it differently.
Yeah.
He would have definitely handled it differently.
And it's really, and I get some understanding. I get the understanding of wanting a wedge issue. That's just not the issue on it, because I mean it's a life and death issue. People commit suicide. Kids commit suicide.
Sure, we're talking about the gender policy.
Gender policy.
Why add to the struggle?
Yeah. And that one.
Find a
I mean,
different way.
there's other points, other strategy, or other issues that would help the social conservative movement. That one that was not tactically decided because of that issue. People live,
That was a knee-jerk
life and death
reaction,
issue,
like
and that's unfortunate.
on a Thursday evening, basically.
But then, so now hopefully we can move on.
I've actually
It's
had
just gonna be still
I've
tough for any
talked
new
to
leader.
former senior staff people that were around the Premier's office at the time, and the person said to me, like, because we would exchange ideas or thoughts for strategy, political strategy, and policy strategy, and the person said to me after the election was over and we were in opposition again, well, I wasn't, I was watching, from the outside. But the person said to me, like, you were right. You would say to us, to the staffers, like, your name's never been on a ballot. You don't have to go out and try to sort this out in the public. And the person said to me, they said, you're right. We just didn't take that into consideration. No, our names weren't on the ballot. We didn't have to.
It's going to cause me PTSD because they never have. And they never have. And when they come back up after our interview on CBC and Terry Seguin this and that, and we're not going on there because of this, and they're all like this. It's like what politicians have to try to do, and the people that work for them, is remember why you're elected,
what got them there in the first place,
what got them there, where you came from, what your values are, and that you're on the side of people. And when you forget that, and you're, and it's great to have strong opinions, but
when your ass isn't on the line, you're not on the hot seat. You can make all these sort of decisions and things because you're not the one up at 10 o'clock at night knowing you've got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do a radio interview, and be prepared and be healthy. You just had 5 events that day, the day before, plus you got whatever else that day. That 5 minutes or 10 minutes,
can make or break you.
And you got to be on, you got to be prepared. And then sometimes, anyway, I'm going on a little rant, but sometimes you wouldn't even get a text or a great job. You're out on your own. Did I do good? I'd have to, contact my colleagues and say, did you guys hear this morning? What do you think? Because they don't realize.
You speak.
Tell me, what'd you think? Master did a good job. I haven't heard from anybody.
Yeah, no negative response.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I used to be the head of the Estes Bridge Local Service District.
You were?
Oh, boy.
I was elected.
Didn't put that on your bio. Didn't see that on your bio.
I was elected
wow.
by a show of hands, and there might have been, 10 people in the room.
How long ago was that, Terry?
Oh, jeez.
Like 20 plus?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you didn't get to see the wrath of the Corey topics and stuff, but that could be a different show.
That's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
So we, at the time, the Department of Local Government was suggesting that the LSDs get into zoning planning. So we thought, a good idea. We've got a nice community out here. Let's do some zoning planning.
Probably get a rural plan.
Get a rural plan.
So we have public meetings, and we're saying, okay, what do you want? Do you want heavy industry out here? What do you want zoning to look like? And we got so much pushback to the idea of zoning. We thought we had a pretty good document.
Oh yeah.
But then that document was whittled down to basically nothing. And shortly after that happened, and I was at a public meeting where someone was really, really vociferous in their arguing and directed it at me personally. That person called me about a month later because a friend of theirs or someone in their neighborhood was putting in an auto body shop. And
they wanted to stop it.
Right.
But they didn't.
They don't want it.
Got that quarry out there, right? So they could have,
if they had the zoning.
right?
Yep.
But
Good point.
I the only reason
If they had a
I
rural
mentioned
plan.
So
If they
it's
had the rural plan.
if they had the rural plan.
Now
So it's a double-edged.
They are adopting, or they have adopted a new rural plan out there. I know this, but it's tough to do that. And it happens. We see it a lot, like in our areas that we've represented. Most people, if they live there for a reason, they don't want any rules until they need them.
right.
And talk about going on the CBC morning show. We'll go into a crowd of 400 people.
Oh, did that?
I've been Moncton High School teachers. Moncton High School teachers. They're holding their pill bag of medication and their inhalers because they're at the Moncton High School and they want something done immediately because it's a safety issue. Or you're at the ATV users, right? And it's something about the trails on Crown land, so you get 300 or 400. Or you're reducing hours at the emergency room in
the nurses and the paramedics.
And you come down to the Burton Lions Club, it's completely packed. What are you going to do about this? Well, then you're thinking about your words fairly carefully, trying to make sure you're on the side of people, not criticizing your own minister or colleague, but
making
also
it
saying, but then also agreeing with them, making it worse. But then you're agreeing with people. So it's trying to find talk about that wieldy of representing the whole country, but without pissing everyone off and also making them,
So what's the reward? Okay, so you just given me a really good description of what sucks about the job.
Very complicated.
Here's the reward. Ran into him probably about 4 months ago at the Canadian Tire in Ormuckto, and he can't read or write. and he's about 60, somewhere between 60 and 70. And when I was elected MLA, he worked prior to that to get his Agent Orange funding, the $25,000, what have you. But it took not even being able to, read or write that well.
Oh, geez.
Our office, Heather Williams, who was my riding assistant, after I got elected, he came in. I've been trying for this and trying to do this and can't get anywhere with it. Maybe I'll get better results with you. And Heather took him under his wing, and he would verbalize what he wanted to say, because you had to prove, between certain years that you lived.
Were you exposed?
Yep. You were exposed, and then your employer, and they had a lot of hoops. But he would dictate to her, explain. Oh yeah, she'd type it out, and then he'd come back and sign it, and then have to get an employer. And anyhow, he came in and he was crying because he got it. I think it was like December 31st, whatever that deadline was, where they kind of approved a lot of them. He came in after the holidays because our office was closed over Christmas, and he came in and he was crying, and he said, "You didn't give up on me." And he thanked Heather and me, but Heather did a lot of the work. But he said, "You didn't give up on me." And I said, no, because we had a dad that couldn't read or write that well. And that was part of it. Soft spot, helped the guy out, and he did deserve it. He just needed the right tools to be able to facilitate it. That is a story right there that, to me, made it all worth it. And
wow, that says so much about you.
A lot of stories.
The fact that you picked that example out as the reward, because that says that you were in it for the right reason.
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
And
that's the little wins.
And I like the idea of
that was a big one.
I like the idea.
That's a big win. Yeah.
When the Agent Orange issue kind of popped up again.
Yes.
And we had to decide, we meaning me, but with my advisors, had to decide whether or not, as the local MLA, would I try to challenge base Gagetown or the federal government on needing to take a look at this again.
Right.
And speaking publicly about the need for further investigation on Agent Orange and getting compensation, getting help. So it tied in, but there were people that were frowning upon me saying things because of the negative light it would have on the community or the province or the economic. If this is,
they don't
this
have
could
$80 million to pay for.
the cost of but then also, will people not want to move here? Will businesses not want to be here? And then it's like, no, the right thing is this needs to be put forward. People then was starting to come forward about their illness and this and this and that. So it's these judgment calls that you have to say, well, no, it's the right thing to do. So it's kind of rewarding then to hear the story of the benefit of how it actually touched someone to improve their life.
Can I just ask a question that's just occurred to me just hearing you guys talking? And you said, Jack, a minute ago that your father could hardly read or write.
He couldn't.
And I'm just trying to imagine how much pride he felt watching his sons do what they have done. Did you ever have that conversation with him?
He didn't get to see us get elected.
He didn't get to see Joe.
no.
He got to see
Jode
me
and
get
I
elected. Got to
He
see
did.
Jode.
Yeah, so he passed away in
Once.
2003. So he
was 55.
Was one election in 1999, and one of my favorite pictures is him giving me a big hug in the Lions Club. He wasn't all on election night winning, in 1999, and and he was a hard worker in trucking and plowing snow in the winter. Jeff worked for him. That's not an easy kind of life, but he was a hard player too. So he was
Worked
hard
hard
on
and played
himself.
Worked hard and played hard,
Yeah,
yeah.
and but I think that kind of says about where we come from and why we put priorities on the issues that we do and the public and the people. He wasn't really a big fan of me running the first time in 1995.
Just wasn't a fan of
Did he say why?
Yeah, no.
Just
not
wasn't a fan of
completely.
politics at all.
And Jeff's going to defend him. But
Well,
what
I've heard
it
the
was,
stories.
no, and what I've come to realize over time is that he was worried about me. And I took it at first that he didn't think I could do the job. And this was 1995 when I'm 19 years old, going to run the first time second year in university, go out to his work site there and kind of mentioned it, and he's not that keen about it. And
he's wasn't one to be in favor of conflict.
No.
And he saw, when he grew up, he would have seen our grandparents, great-grandfathers.
On both
sides of political, having a drink on election day, fighting in the election day yard, like just seeing a lot of
passion. And also
saw, a lot of passion.
And also saw when governments changed.
Yeah.
So when the Robichaud government switched to the Hatfield government and then back to the McKenna, people would lose their jobs like that night. Grader people they'd come and take their graders, and like, you're out of a job. And he did not like that, and he was probably a victim of that somewhat. Being on the PC side.
But he knew he knew how challenging it was and how hard it was going to be, and I didn't know that. And if I didn't know better, which you don't know better, and then it's like, people get into this and they don't know what they're doing and what they're expecting, but they don't know what they don't know, and I wouldn't know. I felt like a school bus was running over me, and it's a big adjustment. And if you can't adjust the expectations of what you can do and can't do in government and the whole thing about it, you gotta get out, or you gotta navigate it. But I do know he was very, very proud of me, and we'd be exceptionally proud to know that all three of us were in the legislature. It's almost unbelievable. It's like, I can't believe that we did this from Gary, little humble beginnings. And
what's the common thing there, though? The three of you have accomplished a lot in your lives. What was the common thing that you share that propelled you?
I think it's the humble beginnings, like you say, Joe.
Yeah.
Know where the little guy, how that little guy really, it's tough.
Well, they need a voice.
Yeah, they need a voice.
The vulnerable need a voice. We think in our own situations, and as we've gotten older, but even aging seniors, like those poor seniors, if you're by yourself, it's hard to advocate for an aging family member when we're able to do it. Like, it's difficult, hard to navigate the system. But just think of the senior that's by themselves, isolated, home alone. They don't know to be able to speak up. They don't know who to call. So it's that voice, I think, that's, we've really been passionate about on those issues. The underdog.
Community service, was that something you guys talked about at the dinner table?
No. So for me, it was an idea that you to not give up, that you could do whatever you wanted to do if you set your mind to it. There were no limitations that others would put on you.
What a great feeling that must have been growing up.
It was great feeling. And just things like, I remember when we announced daycare funding. It was a significant amount of money and whatever, and I was at the press conference and couldn't even really finish it.
G12?
Yeah.
G2?
Yeah.
G12?
Yeah.
G12,
couldn't finish, or it was hard to finish the press conference without crying, and Jeff had to come around to the side of the reporters, and I think, Terry, we talked about it maybe the next day or whatever, but it was very emotional because when we were...
But you also put, to lead up to that, though, Joe, you're going to get into the story, but you put a lot of work into that presentation, too. Very little sleep, but of setting that presentation and the new story.
So carry on. Where were you going with that?
And to get new money out of a time when it was hard, and, in cabinet caucus, talk about fights with finance ministers, and so to get the funds that made a difference. Well, it stemmed from when we went to preschool before Frank McKenna brought in paid kindergarten. We had to pay to go to kindergarten. Preschool.
1980, so it wasn't public kindergarten.
It wasn't public
private
then, and we needed community donation to pay for our mom had at that point took 3 young boys, 4 years old and 8-year-old, and to live on her own from our dad and the situation. And she was on social assistance, and we were in social housing, and we had community donors to allow us to go to kindergarten.
Hold on, one sec. Your mom had three kids.
Us.
So I think we've found the answer to the question. What is the one thing that made you guys so successful?
Exactly.
It's probably your mom.
Exactly.
Right? Sounds like you might have a little bit of her strength.
Yeah,
definitely both. Perseverance, for sure.
We want to definitely talk about our dad, but then our mom, who says she's the courageous when it's not popular, it's not seen by family members or the community in 1980. to do this. She's going to a court system that would frown on it, and many women that's what was happening, of course. But she said no, she wanted to do better for her children, and we love our dad and we love our mom, and it just wasn't a good home life situation for them in that being compatible.
So were they their marriage broke up? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were 4. Jode was 8, and
I was 8.
Kindergarten. We were 4. Jeff was 8, and kindergarten was $50 each a month. So for one child, that would be a lot. But you got a twin. You have twins. That's 2 times 2
$100 a month.
So she had enough to put us into the first month, and then was taking us out for the rest of the year. And an anonymous donor from the community, as Jode said, donated for both of us for the rest of the year. And
kindness of strangers, eh?
And they could have been family. They could have been, but they're people that were anonymous. Then that year as well, early on in that fall, I broke my leg.
Yes. Jode fell down the stairs.
I fell down our stairs at our apartment building because there was no railing.
That's right.
My mom could have sued, but we decided not to.
Where
are you
that
gonna
was
find
a
the money
mistake.
to
Yeah, I know, right? But when you're down,
There's probably no liability.
when you're
insurance on it
when you're
anyways.
down, there's not much you can do. You're still down. So anyway, then we couldn't afford crutches. So I didn't have crutches.
No,
I'd go to kindergarten, and I'm scooting along on my bum.
You imagine, 5 years old,
scooting on my bum. But what I guess instilled on me was that my brother helping me get there, but then our classmates all helped me get up the stairs and down the stairs. And it was this old house, like it was a bungalow, or it was a
It's right beside the
house.
Tri-County complex.
So we talk about influence, and it's like that influence, an early indication of education. Why I put a lot of effort into supporting kids to do well in school and to stay in school and be included even when they're whatever. Like there's so many examples of that. Wow. And our mom like doing these things, taking those courageous steps. And when I ran in 1995, it was a pretty big courageous step. There was a lot of people that laughed at me.
Well, you
running.
were a minority.
Very much.
What did I
Why
think?
did they laugh at you?
Well, because it was.
I was 19 years old. I was 19 years old. Running against Vaughn Blaney. Running against Vaughn Blaney and Ab Rector.
Yeah.
Two MLAs.
Veterans.
Yeah,
we
for sure.
we decorated. We had the Grampy's Toyota,
quarter
ton,
Toyota.
and we used the chicken wire, and there was no fancy letter.
I know,
put
it's crazy.
4 signs,
But that's why
lawn
the
signs on it.
That's why the subsidies for daycare was so important for Jode
Yes.
because they lived it.
Yeah.
Your mom still
I didn't. There
alive?
wasn't any such thing as kindergarten.
Yeah,
when
you
I
didn't
was
even
that
get to
age.
go to
My
kindergarten.
mom was my kindergarten teacher.
And you got to watch the show. My daughter did research on Jack and I being born, and Jeff was
being
4,
born, my
he
mom-
was born, and the year it was, and the medical conditions, and there's
Mom
it's-
had an abnormal uterus when she delivering Jeff. Mom had twin girls that she miscarried because of this
Before me.
abnormal
Before us.
before us.
Oh, I thought it was before
in
me.
between.
Really?
Yeah.
And then
So we're breaking new ground here.
I know.
Yes,
And then Jode and I survived, but it's quite something for a solo baby like Jeff, an individual, but to have twins is, I think we're like the 15th case in the world with this abnormality of uterus. To survive that, the mother and the.
Whoa.
Anyway, that's a great episode.
Oh, good
check that one
It's
out.
a good episode.
Check
Good
that one out.
story.
And yet, so our mom, she got remarried when we were in grade 2 to a military guy. Then we got posted out west for 4 years, came back to Armucto. That's when we went to high school, Jeff, in grade 12, middle school, when we saw you and your career fair.
Yeah.
And throughout Jack's career in communication, he was able to help me understand the questions that might be asked, especially those early years, scrums. It's like golf.
Strategizing.
It's like golf, and you're never. Well, most are never really, except the exceptional ones. You're never really good, but there's so many different. You got your radio interview and your telephone interview, and then you've got your live studio interview. Then you got the TV. Then you've got a scrum. Then you've got your speaking. Public speaking, legislature speaking. Anyway,
Well,
press releases.
that was sort of my training ground of comms and communications prep and things.
And what journalists, he'd always say, before an election or when you're in opposition and you want to get elected, you're always answering back to the journalists. Don't forget that when you get back in the government or when you get elected, because then your comms people and your government and your whatever, and you're never available anymore. So that's one of the reasons why I always wanted to try to say yes. So it didn't look like I was only there at
election time.
Right.
So
That
one of
matched
my
your brand.
one of my slogans in '95 it was to be there all the time, not only at election time, to work hard, not make any promises I can't keep except hard work, and to tell you what, if I can do something for you, I'll tell you that, and if I can't do something, I'll tell you that too. And then those three things, and that was my campaign every single time.
And it's really true to this day. And technology changes, things like that, but I think doesn't get any more complicated than that.
No, and I think because maybe I was younger when I was running, but I never thought it was going to be a long time. And I said, and I'm done politics. I still have to go back to live in the community.
Well, yeah, you didn't think you were in
I didn't think it was going to be 20 years and 35 years.
Not many people think that way. Not many people think that far forward.
Yeah, so I thought, okay, you're going to help a neighbor who might have been liberal. You're going to just cut them out because of a different party? Well, we've learned from how my grandfather was treated when he was a road commissioner, and how my dad or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, there's going to be some politics, but we're still going to try to be honest. No, try to be more fair.
Compassionate.
And I said, I got to
empathetic.
go back in the community and when politics is done and not be a jackass. And so then that's where I thrived on getting every single vote I can get from different political parties. And people actually, those same people who I respected and tried to make sure at least to help some, they came back and voted for me later, you know.
What would happen if in your community someone that you knew was a diehard liberal and they came to you with an issue? Would you put the same amount of effort into solving their issue as you would for someone who worked on your campaign?
Unfortunately, I would work even harder for them.
Why?
Because I would want to make it. I would want to prove that I wasn't just working for the people that voted for me. I'd want to prove that I was there for all of the constituents and that we weren't playing old-time politics and that their issues matter just as much.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Good answer.
And then potentially they'd vote for me, and some of them did vote for me and some of them wouldn't. And when after an election, if the good ones were honest too and said, look, I'm a liberal and I didn't vote for you, and I'm like, well, thank you for telling me that. I respect you for telling me, but I'm going to be there just as much for you. And I meant it and do it. And I think that comes from our grandfather.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
I'd have several,
so many stories.
through my 10 years, several people that would work on liberal campaigns, would come visit my constituency office, maybe not for themselves, but other people in the community or nonprofits they were with, the Legion and the curling club, and say, look, we got to figure out how to get this compressor fixed at the curling club. Can you help us out? Yeah, let's do this. This team here, we got to get this place built. So that you got to set that stuff aside. When you're campaigning for a month, sometimes the clubs come off a little bit and it's all political, but after that, they're constituents as well. They pay their taxes for us to have a job.
I guess it's like a hockey game, right? During the game, you can be combative. You can be like on opposite sides and you're going to beat the crap out of each other. But at the end of the game,
well, unless your last name's Kachuk.
If you,
but
you got to.
I would also say play fair. Don't hit below the belt.
Yeah,
you can't be on the ice, hit below the belt, and think we're going to come off the ice and be friends.
Right.
Expect it's just all bygones.
And there's a bit of difference, like Donald Arsenault. No,
Donald Arsenault.
There's a little difference when you're on the ice and if you're not showing respect, and
if it's fair play, good sportsmanship,
we still talk.
Then everyone can agree. Okay, afterwards, when the lights are off, then we've got a job to do. But if like Joe said, if it's below the belt, then
a little personal,
pretty hard to let's have bygones be bygones.
We still smile.
There are standards.
Still smile and keep going though.
But you also usually get back what you give.
Yes, both ways.
We would do.
So if you're being political, you're going to get it back. You're going to get it back. But if you're being,
I've did some speeches early, and then and be critical and personal against opponents, and then get slapped right back and things like that. And I'd say that doesn't feel good. That doesn't resonate with my being, my DNA.
Yeah,
and other people. Politicians on both sides of the house could do that, and it was no problem. And so then early on, I said, okay, I'm going to keep it on the policy, on the party, against the, And
So if you can't take it, don't dish it out.
And you do
Well,
get
that's the
back what
thing.
you give out.
Well, you do.
And if you don't like it, don't dish it out.
Did you guys have thick skins before you started?
No, I didn't. I still don't.
No.
I got my skin thickened just from being around these guys and watched what they did and how they went through it. So I really knew what was coming when I got elected.
Smart.
Like for the most part,
I got a phone
I
call.
was Jody's EA for years.
Yeah.
and just
Riding
with Jack,
association.
and when he was in government for his 4 years, I was Jody's EA. So you get a pretty good handle on like what these guys dealt with.
You see it happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So what were you going to say?
Well, just one time I got a call from a fellow down in a part of my constituency that was more rural. That was
So
more
you know
rural.
what he's talking
Yeah,
about.
that was more rural. And his truck, he wasn't hired. His truck wasn't hired, but he was really threatening, really. Like he was going to do something to me, or he was so frustrated. And he said, like, David, what was his name? David Jordan. He was an EA for Robichaux or something after he
former
did.
MLA,
Yeah, he
yeah.
said you could take his asshole and stretch that over that coffee table or something, or some sort of backwards way of
So
saying
we stopped being a family show?
Yeah, I guess so.
We're almost out of time though.
And
wish we
I
had
don't know
another hour.
why I
This
brought
is
that.
fun.
Why I brought that up, but it was.
It's a threat.
It's just the behind the scenes threat
Yeah.
that. But we.
thick skin, thick skin.
Yes. Thick
skin.
Talk about thick skin. That's why the asshole over the. Yeah.
Well, that didn't. I mean, you still had thick skin through that, but there's different.
Yeah,
there's
but
different
it was-
levels of what's coming at you.
It rattled me at that time. Or when I got got served my first set of draft court papers. So I'm there at an election time, and
guy walks
Bernard
in the
Lord leaves the Legion wherever the last campaign meeting or event was, and I'm like, oh, that was good. Guy comes around the bus and gives me this envelope, and
You've been
open it up.
served.
I've been served. It just says draft. So he didn't officially finish it, but he wanted
during
to
the
intimidate.
campaign-
During the campaign, he wanted to intimidate, and that rattles you a little bit.
What was the issue?
Over some land deal. You'll go
property.
check out the anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
But it was like a land deal or something that he thought that something
intervened
I
and it
intervened
was
and
ruined
ruined
the
the
deal,
deal,
and-
I was standing up for a constituent, and I had no hesitation. But it rattles you. So then I called my lawyer. What do? You just call him back and you tell him, because he doesn't have clean hands, this guy. And he presented it. So I called him back and I told him, basically, you bring it on, because I got a lot more on you and what you've done to this
Whoa,
to this
so
old
that
to this lady
sounds
to this
like
old
the real
lady
politics.
to this old lady, and you know what? Bring it on. Never heard from him again, because, well, I guess I wasn't going to cave to his threat. His threat during an election, like, and then I would have to try to pay him off or something. So lots of fun.
You guys should write a book.
I know.
Yeah.
I keep saying when I talk to people, I bump into them and we get talking about old things. I say, well, that's another chapter.
Yeah.
I think if we had a recorder, here's the thing out the RP, the proposal out there looking for a recorder, an editor would be nice,
Make
a
all those
writer.
things happen.
We just talk, and then someone
talk.
put it together.
Well, we really,
Terry asking the questions because it just gets to the.
we really appreciate you
root
having us
of
on
a
the
lot
show
of the-
today.
Yeah,
Terry.
having us on your
life.
show, Terry, we
like-
really appreciate it.
It's like four friends. I
know.
I mean, where's the beer?
It just felt so.
So here's a question: Why'd you stop doing the Rogers political panel?
That was craziness. So, I mean, I was
bet.
the only person
Showing up regularly.
Well, showing up regularly, but booking everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we going to talk about? Sitting in the studio waiting for a guest who said they'd be there, but they're not there.
Right.
Oh, so now you have like two people. That's not really a panel, is it? And even though the reaction was quite positive, they saw there were indications to the people at Rogers that there was interest in that format. It was hard for me to do on my own. I mean, I'm retired. And
Yes, but at the
doing
same
this work, and I mean, the reward is being in there, having a community
That's it.
conversation about the issues. But it was a lot of work, and I was retired to do less work, not more.
That's right, draining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack
And you're right.
Jack
If
carries
you
most
have,
of our production.
If you have guests that aren't cooperative all the time and they just stand you up, I get it. I remember those days.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious about that because they were going rolling out and having some shows, and then they stopped. So that was it just came to me to ask that.
Yeah, like Jody said, Jack does most of our work with booking and things.
Well,
It's a lot.
you'll find
Jack
that
does
in
a
every
lot.
broadcast team, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has their own thing that they do. And
Yeah.
anyway, it's been a blast, guys. Thanks
Yeah,
for
this
the
has
chat.
been fun.
Thanks for having us on. We got to have you back again here.
Oh yeah.
We got to try to get you a couple. We got to
have you
get
back.
more questions to talk about ourselves.
He's going to keep coming back until you get sick of him.
No, we got to have you back.
It was fun.
Hear
It was
more
really
about
enjoyable.
you, your family. It was
Therapeutic, too,
fun to
hey?
see us.
To an
Yeah, it
extent.
is actually. Thanks for the thanks for the counseling.
You know, it's so funny.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with Sean Graham some time ago, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and ended up at his place having dinner because I was helping somebody do a speaking engagement, and this person doing the speaking engagement was good friends with Sean. So Sean invited the person doing the speaking engagement to his place for dinner, and he said, well, Terry's with me.
Yeah.
Sean said, bring him.
Yeah. More than
So we're all sitting around, and we're having some wine and some cocktails, and then we go up to the smoking room. And he said, Sean says to me, he says, the whole MB Power thing. I said, you want to talk to me about some of the interviews, some of the questions? Well, yeah. And it was one interview in particular that he wanted to talk to me about, and it was with David Ganong. It was on the panel that was overseeing the MB Power deal. And he said, you asked David Ganong a question. You said to him, what do you know about energy policy? You make candy for a living. He said, when you asked that question, he said, I knew
It was over.
it was done. And I thought, I had no memory of doing that. I thought, what a rude question.
and that stuck with him all those 20 years.
Certainly a powerful question.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Again, not the question; it's the answer as
how
well.
you
Like,
answer it.
people could be thinking that, but that was something that
was
I've
nice for him
run
to be
into Sean a
honest.
couple
I know.
times, and it was really refreshing to talk to him. Actually, we should try to get him on our show.
There's an idea.
They had a great little chat. This was only about 6 months ago at UMB. Saw him.
See what his version of my story is.
Well,
All right.
yes. Well,
wrap her up.
I know it's a pleasure, Terry. You've actually really meant a lot to us over the years.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Thanks. Thank you.
No,
Very
you
kind.
really have. You've played a big part in our time in politics.
and a lot of our viewers, a lot of our listeners, and I think people they would have enjoyed this interview and hearing from you, and hopefully we'll have you on sooner than in another 4 years.
Thank you,
Hopefully sooner
gentlemen.
than that.
Yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen. All the best.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks to our viewers. Have a great day and a great night,
you
and
next week.
we'll see you next time.